Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose, and Thanksgiving is tomorrow. I hope everybody who celebrates it has a great time, and even if you don't, I still hope you have a great day. But with that, there will be no News Dose tomorrow. However, do have another video planned for you all. I will be working on that tonight, and as long as I can get that done, hopefully I'll have it out tomorrow. That way you all will still have something to look forward to. For today, though, we do have a couple things happening. Xbox and Iron Galaxy gave us some more information on that Killer Instinct update. This is something that I'm very much looking forward to. I'm a big fan of Killer Instinct, and they gave us all the latest on that situation. It might not necessarily be everything that we were hoping for, but it is still fun nonetheless. Then also Sony, they are facing a pretty major lawsuit for their PlayStation business, and this is worth billions of dollars. So this is a pretty big deal, and we're going to get into that as well. Before that, though, just a little reminder to make sure to subscribe and ring that bell. But with that said, let's just go ahead and get started off with an update for the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake. We just talked about this yesterday because Jeff Grubb claimed that it's essentially dead. He said that he had heard from his sources inside Sony that they're out on KOTOR, and without their funding, the KOTOR remake is basically dead, or at least for the time being. However, since then, we have gotten a welcome update from Jason Schreier because he reported that it's not dead after all. Quite a roller coaster ride over the last 24 hours, but you can see here where he posted on Resetera saying, "Is it alive and will it ever actually come out?" are two very different questions. The third is, if it does ever come out, what will it actually look like? That said, I've talked to two people at Saber who both say that they're still currently working on it, so I don't believe that the comment that it isn't being worked on in any way right now is true. So this is really interesting because we're hearing a couple different things now from two respected insiders. Despite what Jeff Grubb said, Jason Schreier essentially confirms that it's still in development in some fashion or another. But, kind of looking at what he said here, it doesn't exactly sound like he's, full of confidence about its future. All he really seems to be saying is that it is still alive in some shape or form. So I do look back at Jeff's comment where he said that Sony specifically is out on this game, and that does make me kind of wonder if that part of his statement is correct. Maybe Sony is out on it, but the Embracer Group is maybe keeping it alive until they can eventually find another publisher to fund it. Maybe that's what's happening here. But either way, the good news here is that there is some hope that this game will eventually release. Again, I don't really think anybody should expect it anytime soon, but it is still alive for the time being, or at least according to Jason Schreier, and that right there is great to hear for longtime fans. Speaking of longtime fans, though, Nintendo gave us a very welcome surprise for Switch Online because Jet Force Gemini is heading to the service this December. So that means this is yet another Nintendo and Xbox partnership because Jet Force Gemini is a Rareware published game. It is available in Rare Replay, so Xbox does own this game. But as we've seen before, Xbox and Nintendo, they work very well together. This is not the first time they've done something like this. They also allowed Banjo on Switch Online, and they worked together to get the 007 GoldenEye game on both platforms as well. But this also does open the door for other Rare games on Switch Online in the future. Rare was a huge part of the Nintendo 64 with games like Banjo and Kazooie. You had Conker, Killer Instinct, Perfect Dark, and Jet Force Gemini as well, which might have been one of their more obscure titles. I actually have very fond memories of this game. It's kind of like this third-person shooter where you fight off these alien-like bugs, and it's got some collectathon elements to it with some platforming. It's just a very unique game, though I will say, this being a Nintendo 64 game, its controls are a little bit different than what you might be used to for modern day games. Keep in mind that the Nintendo 64 only had that singular joystick, so shooters didn't feel as seamless as they do now, and I do kind of wonder how that will feel on the Nintendo Switch. Hopefully, it'll be a good translation with a good control scheme, because outside of that, I do think that Jet Force Gemini is a really good game, and I'm glad to see the modern audience get an opportunity to play it themselves again this December. Okay, so let's go and talk about PlayStation, though, because Sony has been hit with a pretty big lawsuit worth $7.9 billion. So this is a significant case for Sony. Just to put that into perspective, Sony's biggest game acquisition thus far has been Bungie for $3.6 billion, which isn't even half of what they're facing here with this new lawsuit. So this is a pretty big deal, and let's go and look at the reason as to why. This was posted up by Reuters, where they said Sony must face a mass lawsuit worth up to £6.3 billion or $7.9 billion over claims the PlayStation maker abused its dominant position, leading to unfair prices for customers, a London tribunal ruled on Tuesday. Then they went on to say that the company abused its dominant position by requiring digital games and add-ons to be bought and sold only via the PlayStation Store, which charges a 30% commission to developers and publishers. Okay, so the issue here boils down to the fact that they're forcing their players to buy from their storefront only. And you might wonder, why is Xbox and Nintendo not being accused of the same thing? And that's because of how each company distributes their digital games. You can actually go to different retailers and you can buy digital games from Nintendo and Xbox. Let's say you go out to Walmart, as an example. They have a section where they sell digital game cards. They don't sell physical copies only. You can go out and pick up something like, let's say, Forza Horizon 5 or Zelda Tears of the Kingdom on one of those cards. Whereas PlayStation, they no longer offer that option. If you want to buy a digital game on PlayStation, you can only buy their store credit at third-party sellers, which again forces consumers to buy games on their walled garden, the PlayStation Store, which means that Sony has 100% complete control of game prices. Now, you also have to keep in mind the increasingly digital world that we live in. Sony currently has a digital-only console, and because Sony doesn't offer any other option, that user base literally cannot buy games anywhere else but on the PlayStation Store. So more or less, it's being viewed as too much power or monopolistic behavior considering their dominant position in the gaming industry right now, which, you know, I think that makes this even more fascinating coming off the Activision Blizzard acquisition. I mean, for 2 years, all of these different regulators, actually the FTC still for that matter, but they kept going after Microsoft. But Microsoft kept telling those regulators, Sony is far too dominant in the game industry right now for you all to accuse us of being anti-competitive. That was a big part of Microsoft's defense, and ironically here, after the acquisition has now been completed, Sony is in fact being accused of taking advantage of their consumers because of their dominant position. So it's really just kind of an ironic situation coming off that 2-year case. But the question remains, is this lawsuit actually valid? And that will be very interesting to see. They are in a very interesting predicament. I think because they don't have those digital cards available at third-party retailers, that might come back and bite Sony here. I mean, we'll see what happens with this, but that is another part to this whole situation. This isn't just important to Sony because, I mean, we're seeing it right now in the game industry. We are increasingly going in that digital direction. So in a way, this is also a warning shot for Xbox and Nintendo. They can all have their digital-only consoles if they want, but you still have to give consumers options. Now, we do actually have one other topic to go over here, though, because we finally got some more information on the long-awaited Killer Instinct update. Now, right away, and I'd say that this is a little bit disappointing, they did not announce a new season or any kind of new content. There were no teases or anything that would give us hope that there's more planned going forward, which to me, I think that is a mistake. I firmly believe that Xbox should make KI a pillar franchise for them. This is a great franchise, and this is an amazing game. And there's a lot of potential to turn it into a long-lasting franchise with completely new or even crossover characters, as we've seen. I personally think that this is one of the best fighting games ever made. It's completely its own thing with unique mechanics, and I think it deserves more. Now, I do remain hopeful that they'll eventually do something like that. Maybe they're working on it as we speak, but for the time being, that certainly wasn't revealed to us today. If anything else here, though, one positive sign here is that Iron Galaxy is working on KI yet again, and they repeatedly said today that they might further balance the game after hearing fan feedback. So that is a good sign going forward that they can continue to make this game fun by revitalizing it through different patches and things like that. But that really was their main goal today. They held a developer stream that lasted about 2 hours long. It was very nostalgic just because I used to watch all of their streams in the past. And, you know, the Keats, he does a phenomenal job at revealing all of that information. I was really happy to see him on stream once again. But yeah, 19 of the 29 characters received some type of update. Rash and Fulgore seems to have been nerfed the most. But really, it just seems like their goal was to make some of those frustrating elements go away. That way, it's a more enjoyable overall experience for everybody who plays the game. And that is a major positive here. Like I said, I do believe that KI is one of the best fighting games ever made, and it's still great to this day. So this update, it will revitalize KI in a lot of ways, and I'm really happy to see that, especially if Iron Galaxy continues to balance it going forward. Another big change, though, is how they're distributing Killer Instinct. They are retiring some of the past versions like the Definitive Edition, and that will now be replaced with the new KI Anniversary Edition, which includes all premium content for just $30. That's pretty much $1 per character, so I'd say that that's a pretty good deal. Also, do keep in mind that if you own the Definitive Edition, you will get the new KI version for free, and yes, this also includes Game Pass as well. You will be able to play this as a subscriber. Now, as for the base version, though, it will be free to play, where characters will rotate in and out every single week. Previously, it was every 2 weeks, but they did shorten that here, and, you know, they're just trying to make it a much more streamlined experience across the board. Now, they still haven't revealed an exact release date just yet, though, but they did emphasize that it will be soon. So, I mean, who knows? It could be at any moment now. I'll keep you all updated on that once we hear more. But overall, I do have mixed feelings on this announcement. I mean, on one side, I'm very excited because I think that there's a lot of reasons to jump back into Killer Instinct. But I do have to admit, I was hopeful that they would announce a new season here. So I guess for the time being, I'm just going to have to beg for that a little while longer. But I don't know. Let me know what you all think about all this. Are you ready to jump back into KI with this update, or was this enough for you? Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all, do you think combining review scores for both multiplayer and single player for games like Call of Duty is flawed? And it is clear that the majority of you all do see this as a problem, and I think that that's more than understandable. I mean, if you look at something like Call of Duty, its single player and multiplayer are completely different experiences. And I'd say that Modern Warfare 3 demonstrates that perfectly. Its single player might not be the best, but fans are loving the multiplayer. And in reality, that's what most people buy Call of Duty for. It's multiplayer. So its review scores right now might not represent what those gamers are actually looking for, and I see that as an issue. A score is supposed to be a representation that helps consumers, and if anything, I think that this just kind of shows you the importance of actually reading a review rather than just simply looking at the score alone, because in this case, its final score, which combines the two, can't possibly represent both editions of the game accurately. I mean, it's like saying, well, okay, the single player is a 5 out of 10, but the multiplayer is a 10 out of 10, so we'll just go ahead and give the whole game a 7.5. Again, a lot of people really only care about the multiplayer, so that score might not represent what fans are actually wanting to know. So I do think the two should be separated, and even more so, I think it's very interesting to me how reviewers sometimes prioritize their scores, and let me kind of explain that. So Call of Duty's score is lowered because of its single player, despite its multiplayer being the main attraction. But if you think about that, why doesn't that happen for, let's say, single-player focused games? So I'm going to go ahead and use Uncharted as an example here, and I feel like I can fairly criticize that game because it is a top 3 franchise of all time for me. You all know this very well. But let me tell you this much, that's not because of its multiplayer. I know some people might disagree with this, but its multiplayer is really just average. It's okay, but that didn't affect its critic score at all. Now, why is that? Is that because Uncharted's priority is its single player? And if you say yes, then why is a multiplayer-focused game like Call of Duty not treated the same? Do you see what I'm trying to say here? I just think that the whole review process for games that do have both a multiplayer and single-player edition is deeply flawed. And I think that it's something that we should push to fix going forward. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode. But if you liked the video, don't forget the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.